Hello, my name is Michael Tillotson and I am an author. I wish I had a good way to move this camera to look at different parts of this room because I've got an Indivisible poster on my wall over in that general direction, but I can't, so this video will contain spoilers for Indivisible, so bear that in mind. Anyway, Indivisible, if you're unaware, is a really great fighting game / turn-based game hybrid thing made by the developers of Skullgirls. In my opinion, at least, I thought the game was fantastic from a ton of different angles. I loved the world and the characters and the gameplay, and most relevant to this discussion, the story. When I first played Indivisible, the biggest thing about the story that jumped out as really fun is how Ajna could just store people in her head. I thought, and still kind of think, that is such a fun narrative thing, and I genuinely thought up 3 or 4 stories at the time coming up with different variations of this idea. It's amazing, I love it, I wish I could do it in real life. That might be kidnapping if I were to do it in real life, but that's besides the point. I would totally keep people in my head. But the second thing that jumped out at me about Indivisible's story is that the power scaling of this universe is kind of off the rails. Ajna is just constantly going through these huge power increases all the time. There is some Dragon Ball level power creep going on here. And yet, it's good? Which is very weird. Generally speaking, you do not want huge amounts of power creep in your narrative. When the big villain is introduced and then defeated only for a new, bigger, badder villain to show up, it can start to make the original villain feel a little underwhelming when suddenly the heroes and all their friends now need to reach new heights of power that far surpass that of the original villain. And the more times this happens, the more of a joke the old villains start to become. It starts to feel like, man, reaching the power level of the first villain is actually remarkably easy. And it's almost a little embarrassing that the villain who is supposedly a threat to the entire world was only at that power level. He should have just gone and grinded a little bit more XP. What? You're telling me this new villain is only as powerful as Frieza? Man, I beat Frieza 3 seasons ago. So, how does Indivisible do it? How does Indivisible manage this power creep in a way that not only avoids this issue, but actually leads to a really fun story whose power creep is not only not a bad thing, but it's part of its appeal? Well, first and foremost, it's important to note that Indivisible is a game, and that might have something to do with it, to be honest. Most video games, especially Metroidvanias, which Indivisible ostensibly is, that classification for Indivisible might be a little contentious, but we're focusing on the story here, so for the purposes of this video, just roll with it. They have you start off in a relatively weak space, and then you get much stronger as time goes on. The biggest and most glaring example is probably Terraria, which has a wonderfully satisfying power creep, where you start off as a regular dude with a pokey stick and wind up being able to fly around and blasting enemies with giant lasers. So, just by its nature as a video game, Indivisible probably gets some leeway on being able to throw some power creep your way where another medium might not be able to. But the thing is, it's not just on a mechanical level where this power creep happens. In Ender Magnolia, for instance, you feel so much more powerful by the end of the game than at the beginning, with all these abilities letting you fly up walls or jump 20 feet into the air. But narratively, the game doesn't seem to acknowledge it that much. Lilac, the protagonist, is just an attuner, and sure, his roster of robot sidekicks is gradually increasing, but the story still treats him as being about on the same power level as when he first set out. This isn't true in Indivisible, though. Ajna is getting significantly stronger over the course of the narrative. Ajna's rapidly increasing reserves of power is acknowledged by the story, and it's one of the central plot points. And it feels so good from a story perspective. It's impossible to completely separate story and gameplay, so the fact that we get used to Ajna's crazy strong abilities is still relevant, but that alone wouldn't have been enough, for me at least, to turn a blind eye to badly written power creep narratively. So, how does it do it? Well, the first and probably most important thing to keep in mind about the power creep of Indivisible is that it applies to Ajna specifically. Ajna is the only one reaching these insane levels of power. The first major villain of the story is Ravanavar, and Ravanavar is initially defeated by Ajna after she unlocks her first big power boost. But Ravanavar never feels like his role in the story is later undermined, because even as we explore this world more and more, he's still one of the most powerful characters we see in the story. And while your partners are getting more powerful alongside you, there's this implication that they're all just kind of piggybacking off of Ajna's Iddhi. Your Iddhi gauge, which is basically your super meter, increases as Ajna's power increases. And the stronger Iddhi abilities your partners gain are a direct result of Ajna's powers. She does literally store all of her friends in her head. After all, something I still am very jealous of. So it's not a terribly crazy idea to think that they might be able to leech off of her power a little bit. This was something I really liked about Dragon Ball GT too, and it was a big reason I really couldn't get into Dragon Ball Super. Frieza in Dragon Ball Z was like the biggest and most powerful mortal in the entire universe. And while Goku and his friends all kind of got stronger, aside from the hero group, that remained true throughout all of Z. Cell was literally created from Frieza's DNA, so it made sense that along with the other DNA Cell had, he was stronger. The androids were all artificial, which is a little bit more of a stretch, but I can buy it. And beyond that, next biggest threat was Majin Buu, who is a literal demon. GT kept this up pretty well too. There was that general dude who was stated to be even stronger than Majin Buu, but other than him, we had Baby, who was once again only as strong as he was because he was literally absorbing people, and then there were the Shadow Dragons, who arguably weren't mortals. They came from the Dragon Balls. And even then, only 3 of them were actually stronger than Frieza. And that was it. There were no other major villains in GT. Just Black Star Dragon Ball Saga, Baby Saga, and Shadow Dragon Saga. Yep, that was it. Pretty sure. Meanwhile, in Dragon Ball Super, from what I saw of it, do bear in mind I'm not super familiar with Super, I didn't like it much, so I didn't watch much of it. But it kind of felt not only were there hundreds of people out there stronger than Frieza Saga Frieza, but there were hundreds of people out there stronger than Majin Buu, and sure, these people are from other dimensions and whatever, but it almost feels like they're spitting on the face of the established lore, And then on top of that, GT had Goku leagues ahead of everyone else, including Vegeta, but Super was so determined to not leave anyone behind that literally everyone on the hero team just got another huge power boost, and But okay, enough about Dragon Ball, let's get back to Indivisible. Limiting the amount of people involved in power creep is great, but if that's all Indivisible did, it wouldn't really be notable enough for me to make a whole essay about it. See, Ajna's power lets her do basically anything she wants. Nobody can really get in her way, and anyone who tries is just met with a totally unstoppable force, and Ajna uses this power to basically enforce whatever she thinks is right on anyone she meets. But Ajna, well, she's not exactly the brightest. She's hot-headed and impulsive and doesn't think things through. She's going around enforcing her justice on everyone, but the entire first half of the game is really just about her messing up pretty much everything everywhere she goes. Sometimes she's simply acting rashly without thinking things through, other times she's being manipulated, or she's so focused on one goal that she overlooks what's going on around her. This culminates, of course, when she goes to Lawn after her round trip around the world, getting ready for her big showdown with the big bad Kala. When she's told that she's not ready, she forces her way through anyway. And then she goes to face Kala, the one person who may be stronger than her. Ajna's strength flares to never before seen heights and a great battle ensues. But the battle was of such monumental proportions that the entire area around Lawn was being destroyed, and soon enough, Lawn itself was destroyed as well. Ajna soon wakes up, and upon witnessing the destruction, she realizes that she really wasn't ready. Her limitless power could be the gateway to limitless good, yes, but also limitless devastation. And she's still getting stronger. She goes on a second round trip around the world, once again trying to help the situation the various parts of the world find themselves in. Only this time, she finds herself faced with situations that she was either the cause of or she made significantly worse. And this time, she doesn't just beat up the biggest person she can find, hoping that'll make things better. She starts working towards actual solutions, all the while coming to terms with what she did to Lon and working to find peace within herself. Ajna's power creep in Indivisible is so good because it means something. Usually when a story is faced with power creep, it's often either there for the sake of spectacle or because the heroes have already beaten the villain with power level N, so the next villain should have a power level of N+1, so the question of whether our heroes can still beat them isn't automatically a yes. But for Indivisible, it meant so much more than that. Ajna needed to learn what having boundless power really meant and how to cope with that. It's almost like if we had a version of Superman who started off without his powers and slowly developed them over time. Superman often grapples with this conflict of living in a world of cardboard, a world where he has to always walk on eggshells or he risks destroying it without even meaning to. But for Superman, this is something he can come to realize quickly because he always had his powers. But for Ajna, they only started to set in after Kala was freed. And so by the time she finally realized she lives in a world of cardboard, it's too late and the damage was already done. And this is a fun take, isn't it? I think so. Characters with boundless power are always kind of subject to ridicule by default because they're just so powerful that we never really expect them to run in any real challenge. We just know they're going to win any given fight because, well, that's what having boundless power means. But when it's handled well, these characters with no limits can be really interesting, and it's a shame to see them dismissed so often, you know? There's a lot you can explore from this angle, and Indivisible was one of the really fun ones, I think. Now, if only 505 Games would hand the series over to Future Club like Autumn Games did with Skullgirls. But that's all from me. See you in another video.